Wow, really sorry for releasing this on late Friday as well as Good Friday. If you're seeing this, if you could, please remember to give it a like and consider sharing it out. I'm not sure how many people will see it today, but I want to cover the news as it happens. Now, there's no shortage of information around the troubles with, for example, Anthem and, of course, other EA releases. But what we need to talk about is the fallout from that. Now, I've had a couple people from inside EA reach out to me today to give me some pretty interesting information that puts DICE LA on the hot seat, further layoffs on the horizon, and even worse information for the internal employees. Now, I held on to this until 7 o'clock because that's what my source asked for. And on top of that, there are employees at EA who won't find out about this until the end of the day today. So I'm going to share with you a couple pieces of information, break down maybe what it means, but ultimately, Anthem continues to Anthem and the lower than expected sales of Battlefield 5 have started to have real world impacts on not just the employees, but the managers inside the walls of Electronic Arts. So, as some background, most EA employees are given an annual bonus that ranges somewhere between 15 and 20% of their salary. For a typical worker in the Redwood Shores area, that can represent as much as $40,000 one lump sum payment, and a lot of people count on that. Now, I've seen this as with Blizzard and other development companies. The way they do that is the reason they do that is it keeps their overall their fixed expenses down. If you're paying salaries, these can be fixed expenses as opposed to variable expenses. It keeps people pushing forward. And, you know, when you have big financial bonuses, the problem with them, and when I ran a team, we ended up giving up some pretty big bonuses. And the problem is when they get so big and when you can't 100% affect whether or not you get it, they can become demotivating. They can actually be a real negative for employees. What a lot of companies will do is they'll hire people, let's just use a number, 80,000, even though on the open market they might be worth 100,000. And then they'll say, well, yeah, but you can earn up to 20% bonus every year. So that's really like making 96,000. Or in this case, maybe they make 150K or whatever. So people take a little less on their paycheck and hold out for this gigantic bonus that usually will net them out more than what they're worth. So that example wasn't perfect, but they'll take a $90,000 salary, even though they're worth 100 because they'll make 106 or 108, if they hit their bonus. Now, bonuses are not guaranteed, but the way they're sold to employees usually are. Usually they'll say in recruitment, and I've had this happen to me many times, where they'll say, well, 7 out of the 8 last years, we've paid out 100% of our bonuses. Now, obviously, our bonuses aren't guaranteed, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, everyone always gets it. Now, there is some fault of the employees for believing that, but also I've been in the other side of that chair, and you usually don't get the feeling that you're not going to get your bonus. Now, word has just come down that due to the failure of Battlefield 5, which still sold many millions of copies, but the failure in the investors' eyes and in EA's eyes, as well as Anthem, they are now only funding the bonus pool for frontline workers 50%, meaning obviously your bonus at best would be half of what you were expecting. Now, I have a huge problem with this simply because frontline workers are not the ones that told people, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Frontline workers are not the ones that mismanaged the project for Anthem up until the very last minute when they had to rush it out the door. The frontline workers are the ones that are getting the bone the hardest here. Executives are being funded at 75%. So executives are still getting 75%. Now, it's a 25% hit for them, but why are they getting more than the frontline workers as a percentage? Like, if they both got paid 50%, I think you could understand that, but you're giving a higher percentage to executive. This is going to breed a lot of disdain on the teams. Now, there's no word yet what Andrew Wilson and other C-level executives are getting, but my source tells me, knowing all other variables, it's safe to say they probably voted to give themselves full bonuses. Even though their policies of creating a confrontational relationship with our customers is directly responsible for the massive fall in stock price and why our stock options are useless, and our restricted stock options are worth like half of what they were less than a year ago. Brutal. This is not painting a great picture if you happen to work at EA, and I want to let you know, again, any critiques here aren't about the frontline workers. They're not really the developers. Now, if you're a developer and you're online attacking the gaming community, that's not a good look. But I'm going to guess that 95% of the employees at a company like EA, maybe 98%, you've never interacted with online. You don't know who they are. They're not really affecting things. When you have speeches, like interviews, where you have Patrick Soderlund telling people, hey, you're the customer, you don't get it. You're just not smart enough to understand what we're trying to do. If you don't like it, don't buy it. And then meanwhile, I'm going to take my $20 million bonus and flee the company before any of the fallout. Now, they asked the team, I'm going to skip this part. It's a little telling, I think. Since we use sort of a stack rank system, some teams are going to get less than 50%. It's some of our hopes that there is some backlash to this. Wilson will have to change course to save face and get employees more of the bonus they deserve. Now, bonuses go to when you do above and beyond your job. Now, if Battlefield 5 truly was a failure in the walls of EA, I don't know if that necessarily falls directly on your employees. You could make the argument, well, there's less money, so we have to pay out less money. You can't just pay out money you don't have, but I don't think there's any question whatsoever that EA has absolutely plenty of money. Basically, the bonuses for everybody got cut to prevent further layoffs, particularly at Bioware and DICE, even if people at those studios deserve to be let go as a result of causing the toxic environment we're in today. Ironically, because they were talking about how our toxic customers were. Oh, wait, ironically, because they were talking about how toxic our customers were. Right. And my source goes on. We've also been told in so many words, if Anthem revenue does not tick up the stock price and it continues to fall or fail to rebound, further layoffs will be on the table. Most likely, the DICE LA office will be closed entirely, and with any survivors being pushed to Industrial Toys or Respawn, and there will be a significant cuts at Bioware. That is probably not too shocking for the viewers of this channel, people that are in the know with what's going on with EA. And I'm never really I'm not someone to speak out about people's giant salaries and things like this, because look, you negotiated it, that's not for me to critique. Obviously, when you have like Activision doling out gigantic signing bonuses to people while also laying off 800 people and saying they're not making enough money, the optics of that is pretty disgusting. And, accepting a $20 million, I don't blame the person for accepting that bonus. I blame the board of directors that decided that that was okay to pay out. And even though they have problems with being overstaffed and being unprofitable, I don't see things really getting better for Battlefield 5, and I'm not sure what Anthem could really do to bring more players to the game. We just talked about a survey the other day where according to this survey, more than 50% of people had already quit Anthem for good. And if it's just a type of game where you get your $60 up front and you want to, that's how you make your money, then people having quit the game at this point isn't that big of a deal. But because EA relies on games as a service, they need that long tail revenue. They want to get your $60 up front, but then they want to slowly extract $10 here, $20 there, $5 here, $35 there, to continue to get your average ticket price maybe over $100 or maybe over $200. They want more people to get into Origin premium access. They need this to be part of their profit center, because it's not about, and this isn't my original saying, it might even be one of Jim Sterling's. The problem with these companies is their investors get mad, not just, they can still make tons and tons of money, but if they didn't make literally all the money, then that becomes an issue. And I suppose that's the nature of a company that's being publicly traded, and that's the concern and the problems you run into, and why things like development crunch become such a huge problem in the industry. When we look at how Anthem was developed, we saw in the expose by Jason Schreier that they had more than 6 years to develop that program, ultimately having to put it together in basically the last 6 to 18 months. That is not the problem. That is not the fault of the frontline workers in most cases. You can maybe be understaffed and you can make that argument, but the problem really is that they agreed to a project that they really had no existing vision for, and they had piss poor senior management that let people, what it sounds like, dick around for 4 years before EA finally put their foot down and said, look, you've got to deliver something here. Bioware, I'm sure, is absolutely ripe for layoffs, but EA is in a position where they can't really lay people off because they need to fix the game. I was actually told by a different source inside of EA too that, remember when I talked about heads rolling at Bioware? That actually is, those new positions they opened up are actually additive positions. So they added extra staff around loot. They added extra staff around combat balancing. They've added extra staff around the shop items. They are reinvesting in Anthem in an effort to try and save it. Now, reputation does a lot of damage. When we look at Fallout 76, for example, the game today is probably, undoubtedly, significantly better than it was at launch, but that reputation never is going to disappear for Bethesda and the Fallout 76 fandom. Yeah, they had about 1 million concurrent players at one time, but what are the odds someone's going to see Fallout 76 on the shelf for $60 and think, hey, I'm going to pick that up today? Extremely low. I mean, they didn't buy it when it was $30 or $10. They didn't buy it at all. If it went free to play, that's probably the only chance they have. But, it looks like I was wrong about that. I mean, they haven't gone free to play at this point. I suppose it'd probably be the only way to get a new influx of players. Is Anthem going to do that? Probably not. Maybe they'll do like free weeks or try to do some more open betas to try, or open test plays for people to get back into the game. That probably would be something I would do if I were Bioware. I'd do a free play weekend here or there to try and get people back into the game, because they have made significant improvements over time. But when you look at the DICE studio in LA, there are a lot of people that work there that didn't go to a presser and say, don't like it, don't buy it. There are a lot of people there that weren't combative with the fandom, and it's unfortunate that those are the people that are going to be taking the biggest financial hit, the people that maybe live paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, I know a $40,000 bonus sounds gigantic, but we don't know what their salary is. We don't know what their living conditions are. If you live in California, it isn't cheap. If you live in Washington, it's not cheap. So these are the people taking the brunt of the hit. Meanwhile, executives still taking 75%, and the C-level people probably still taking 100%. Nonetheless, this looks like we're in the DICE LA may be in trouble. Bioware is probably in trouble. I don't know how long the leash is for Bioware, given that they're just adding these positions. I'm going to bet that EA is going to give them a few months to turn things around. I mean, you can't change it overnight. This is the problem that they have. With Battlefield 5, I think we can look back at that and say, we look at the long tail and say, sure, you sold many millions of copies this year. Definitely 1 million or 2 less than you projected. But also the amount of those, was it 19 million, 18 million copies, something huge. How many of those people are willing to come back for Battlefield 6 at this point, given how poor their experience was? They're probably looking 2 years out and look at, wow, customer satisfaction is at an all-time low. We didn't perform the way it was. We don't expect next year's game to do much better. People aren't buying the DLC. People aren't playing and buying into this games as a service baloney. And it looks like heads are going to roll. And, if you're on the ground floor there, my heart goes out to you. Unfortunately, this is the way it is. And hopefully this means that we're going to start to see some change in the games industry. But I'd have to be honest with you here and say I'm not hopeful. Hope you were at least informed by this video. And let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. And we'll talk to you again real soon.